We're over 3 years in to what you would describe as kind of the AI era. Lots of us are so immersed in it that we basically assume, well, everybody already is doing this. Everybody already knows everything. The reality is less than half of people know even a little bit about it. There was another poll a few weeks prior that I shared that, basically said something to the effect of 46% of people say they've heard a lot about AI in America, which means the other 54% have heard none or what they would describe as a little about AI. That's way lower than you might expect if you talk to web designers, web developers, and, tech nerds all day.
AI is something we're all thinking about and talking about in technology right now, and for good reason. But for agencies, it also points to a big opportunity to keep being the expert guide for your clients' trust as they grapple with how to use it clearly and responsibly. In this interview with Rob Howard from innovatingwithai.com and a fellow agency owner, he shares what he's learned in the real world, offering AI consulting for his clients and training other agency owners like you on how to approach it. But if you're an agency owner, you already have the framework to market and sell your services. Now, there's simply another major technology in the mix. And as you've done all along, you evolve with the market, with technology, and your clients need help making sense of all that. So, Rob breaks down the opportunity into three areas: training, helping teams understand AI and use it; two, strategy, choosing the right use cases and outcomes before picking tools and running with it; and then three, integration, turning AI into real world workflows that actually stick and help and make the businesses more efficient and better. Beyond that, he shares practical insights on how to position this, scope it, and lead clients through change without hype and building trust. So listen in. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Agency Success. I have got a friend of mine that I've known for a couple of years doing some cool work with AI and has a background with running an agency, working with other agencies, and particularly in WordPress. But I've been on his mailing list for, I don't know, a year now, Rob. And I'm like, man, I got to get this guy on and share what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're doing for our agency owners and agency success. But Rob Howard, welcome from Innovating with AI to the podcast. Thank you for being on. Could you share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here. And we were just saying, it's been a while since we caught up, so I'm glad we get to do it, in a fun way. So as you mentioned, my career for 20 plus years has been web developer. I currently run and have run for over 15 years WordPress design and development agency. And we have a solid team there. We've been through kind of thick and thin over the last 5, 10 years, as I'm sure, many of the folks who have done that type of agency work would identify with. So that's how we originally know each other, from really the WordPress community. And, I've always also had sort of an education arm or branch to my business. I love the idea of doing, online courses, teaching, education. We've done courses for some of the open source frameworks that we manage and, publish to the world. And we were also doing WordPress and web dev education at the time that ChatGPT hit the market. So that was a little over 3 years ago at this point. Within a couple of months, we were like, this seems like it's going to be a thing. So we started to do AI education, webinars, workshops, courses, stuff like that. Now, 3 years later, it seems obvious, right, that that would be a big thing, but it really blew up beyond our expectations in a good way. So, what we have now done as a team is really built out a second company, which is called Innovating with AI. Previously, we were doing education within kind of the context of our agency. Now, it's big enough that we have basically two companies. One is Innovating with AI, and the other is the client services agency. So, Innovating with AI, as you mentioned, is a free newsletter that anybody can join. We do weekly kind of analysis, insights. We try to be way more than just like the top three news headlines and really go deeper into how does this affect you as a person in your career, in society, all those things. So that's fun because we get to go kind of a little deeper and do what I think are just more interesting things than you might see either in a daily just headline newsletter or in mainstream media where they do a lot of this stuff, but they don't go as deep as you might go if you were like only on the AI beat, right? And in addition to that, we have a number of educational programs that our students can join. Our biggest of which currently is called the AI Consultancy Project. And that is all about creating a consulting business around client services that are AI related. So that can be somebody who has an existing agency. We have many folks in the program who are pivoting or adding a line of services. We also have folks who have really never done anything and maybe they just quit their job or they want to, transition in the near future. And they're saying, okay, I'm going to do this as a side hustle and then I'm going to get it to grow over time. So we teach not only the AI skills that are essential for that, but also the business skills, like what should my menu of services look like? What can I offer to a client today where I don't need to learn too much, but I can still be kind of ahead of the game? And what might I need to, study up on or maybe hire a subcontractor or stuff like that. So it's been really amazing, the world of AI consultants really the goal that we, sort of teach our students is you're not really doing anything different than you might have done 5 or 10 or even 30 years ago as a advisor to a company. But the landscape has changed. There's so much new technology. People need everything from basic training. You'd be amazed how well basic training sells, right? If you just go into a company and you say, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do, a 2-hour session or a 2-day boot camp, people love that, right? Because they need it and they need somebody they trust, right? So really being able to transfer all these things that we learned in the consulting and agency world over decades, right? To the new opportunities that have come out now that we have this rapidly emerging and changing technology that, almost every business needs to at least act on it in some way, right? Everybody needs to be aware of it, how it's changing the ecosystem, and all those things. So we have over 1,200 students in that program right now, which is awesome. Very vibrant community. We have a public directory now of folks who have kind of quote unquote graduated. We have some key milestones. You don't
Yeah,
really
I saw,
graduate. You're kind of in it forever, right? But yeah,
yep.
the directory is really cool, and we've already been, seeing people get leads through that, which has been
I
awesome.
I saw a friend of mine, Keenan, in there. Pinged him
Yeah.
too because I'm on your newsletter, and I was like, I'm gonna check out the directory, and happened to see a familiar face. I think, Rob, that's so awesome because, as you said, and me too, as we've spent a lot of time in WordPress and web development work and technology, essentially, in our careers, we've seen the explosion of the internet and through a technology platform, one technology platform in particular, like WordPress, like
Yeah.
40%, over 40% of the web is WordPress, runs WordPress. And now you got this phenomenon that, for my time, almost 20 years now in the space, it was always going like this. iPhone hit, started going up. And now with ChatGPT and AI and the LLMs, it's like straight up. And I go, oh my God. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine what other people are thinking. But when we were talking in prep before this, you mentioned the percentage of people actually using it. Like we swim in this every day. And I use it every day, using it right before this.
Yeah.
I'll use it right after this. However, you mentioned something that I want. Would you share some of that? You were talking about the percentage of people actually using it, and how we might be in the middle of it, not recognizing not everyone else is.
Yeah, 100%. So, one of the things that we discover over and over again is that, our students and our newsletter readers, like you, they're immersed in this, right? Like they're literally subscribed to numerous daily AI email newsletters, right? Just by virtue of being kind of in our orbit. So they're always thinking about it. Most likely they have at least one AI tool that they pay for, if not multiple. Like I have multiple that are on my screen pretty much all the time, right? So
Same.
we're deep, right? We're deep in it. And what happens is you often will get a lot of people will ask, how do you even keep up with all the new stuff that's coming out? Like I feel like there's like 7 new releases every day, if not more, right? Which is true. And the result of that in the average sort of techie person's head is this feeling of, well, if I'm seeing all this, everyone else must also be seeing all of this stuff, right? And one thing you can do if you want to test this in the wild is go out to your friends and family and say, hey, do you know what ChatGPT is? Of course, they'll say yes. And do you know what OpenAI is? And almost no one will identify the brand name OpenAI, right? Which is baffling to somebody who's in it all day because of course, we think about this all the time and we're like, oh, is OpenAI in a bubble? Is OpenAI going to make this deal with this other company and blah, 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 right? So, but there's also some statistical support for that. In fact, I was sharing with the students in our Slack community this uh, Gallup poll and one of the headline items is that they surveyed 22,000 workers. This came out 3 days ago from when we're recording this. Uh, and of those 22,000 workers, 12% of employed adults say they use AI daily in their job. So, right? Like even if you go back and you're like, okay, let's drill down to, white collar workers or whatever, like this is not a high amount of people if you look at the entire population,
It's
right?
shocking
So
to me,
it's
actually, because I depend on
yeah,
it. It's a tool,
yeah,
just like,
I know.
Zoom is a tool. It's a tool that I depend on.
Yeah. So, we're over 3 years in to what you would describe as kind of the AI era, right? Lots of us are so immersed in it that we basically assume, well, everybody already is doing this, everybody already knows everything, right? The reality is, you know, less than half of people know even a little bit about it. There was another poll a few weeks prior that I shared that, basically said something to the effect of 46% of people say they've heard a lot about AI in America, which means the other 54% have heard none or what they would describe as a little about AI. So again, like kind of the same like direction there, which is like that's way lower than you might expect if you talk to web designers, web developers, and tech nerds all day.
The message I wanna kind of accentuate from what you said is just because we might be immersed in it as really a tech industry doesn't mean the rest of mankind has or humankind has. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very good insight, because we swim in it, we're in technology, we do this every time. It's part of our job is keeping up with the tools and things that are going on. But the fact is there's a big bargaining market for potential consulting. So, um, that was a little bit about that tool in the background and how you kind of got into this. And I'm really curious to dive in about your perception and what you teach your students about how an agency can either add services or start something new like you've done with your businesses, and what the opportunities are and how to approach it. Because I think one thing I also got, Rob, that I loved what you just said was as agency owners, we already have some of the basic frameworks to bill, invoice, scope work. We've got retainer projects. We've got, different types of services. We know how to do client service work as agency owners. Now we got a new technology. How do we do it? So I'm curious your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. We have when you start our program as a student, we give you like a very quick quiz. It's like a couple of questions and it assesses where you're at in terms of your tech experience as well as your business experience. And then it puts you into one of our 9 personas, which are basically tracks. Like you have access to all the information, but we say, since you're already at sort of like intermediate business skill and high tech skill, you should start with this track, right? If you already own an agency and you already can code, you should start with that track, right? So many folks who are in the WordPress agency world already, or any design or development agency, will start in sort of the intermediate or advanced tracks on at least one of those things, tech or business or both. So that way we skip over some of the things like you need to learn how to, think about an API, for example. Most likely you already know what an API is, you know how to send an invoice, right? If you're in, a certain space in your current business already. We also have folks who start at what we call the pioneer level, where you're in basic business and basic tech skills. So they might need more help with how do I set up a company? How do I set up invoicing? How do I bill my first clients, right? Maybe I'm working full time and I want to quit my job eventually. I'm really starting from scratch. So the folks who are in that position where they already have some clients and some experience serving clients, typically what they benefit from the most is exposure to what we consider kind of a proven menu of services that people buy related to AI, templates for what should that proposal look like. If I'm going to give a training, we have a starter template of slides that you can use and kind of guidance, and you can watch people's trainings that they've done, other students, myself, right? So basically, everything that we recommend, we try to break it down into the three buckets of training, strategy, and build or implementation. So if you're doing a web design, agency in some form right now, most likely you are already doing discovery and strategy, which is bucket two, as well as implementation, like developing a website or a plugin or whatever, right? So the bucket that people ignore or underestimate, though, is trainings. And what we've found is that you may think it's easy, or you may think that nobody cares, or everybody knows about it already, but it is relatively straightforward for somebody with existing client service experience to create a 1 or 2 hour training on AI 101. Maybe you have another one that's AI 201 that gets more advanced, that sort of thing, and immediately go out to your existing client base and start pitching that experience to people. What we find is that number one, if a company already knows you and they've bought from you, they're generally going to love that idea, right? And they're going to be like, we're thinking about this all the time. We've got some employees who are using it all the time. Some employees hate it. Some employees are confused by it. We want to get everybody on the same page, right? So we have actually a web developer and designer who ran an agency, who I've known for many years. He joined the program about a year ago, does open source CMS development at his company, does web design. And he was like, I didn't really know much about AI when I joined. Like I knew it existed, but now like I'm out there and I'm selling to the same like nonprofit and government and like corporation clients, and I'm selling them trainings. And then we're doing like a 2 day boot camp and we're doing all this stuff and they're referring me to other people. So if you already have an agency who's doing marketing or web work, it can be a pretty natural extension to be able to say, you already trust me and know me. Now I'm going to kind of be your advisor and teacher about the next thing. The other thing that's really valuable is that we want you to sell things that people know how to buy, right? So, in other words, I don't want you to invent something totally new. These companies or organizations already bring people in as contractors to give HR trainings, to give technical trainings, continuing education, all sorts of stuff. So oftentimes they'll have the budget already. They will have a framework for hiring a trainer to come in, stuff like that. So you'd be surprised actually how quickly you're able to move into that sort of new vertical of offerings. And then you do some of those, you start to build up a reputation. Uh, People now know you not only as the web person, but the AI person, right? And you can move into things like we need a governance policy. We need an AI audit of how we're doing right now. We need a strategy. We need to make sure all of our team members are on the same page about how we're using AI and when we are and are not relying on it. And then the bigger picture stuff that the engineers will really like is things like building an AI workflow for a client, building custom tools and apps that are either AI powered or coded with the help of AI, stuff like that. And once you get there, now you've got pretty much a whole new wide open field to pursue that is complementary to the quote unquote old school web development and web design that you might have been doing in the past. And you never even had to change your business name or, turn everything upside down and, do this sort of like dramatic pivot or restructuring. It was very organic.
What's like, well, like for a typical agency, and we work with a lot of boutique agencies. I know yours is some enterprise, a lot of enterprise work, but a lot of ours are those local geographic based agencies. And I think there's one thing you just said right there, which is start with the training. I think you mentioned at some point, it's a 2 hour or it's a day or 2 day type training, but I mean, those would be easy to come in. And it seems like where a business would want some efficiency and to use those tools and to understand what it is. And that seems like a natural first step for a lot of people is just kind of getting into that and seeing if there's something there more and what you could do to expand services and work into this. But what would you suggest a first step for an agency?
Yeah, typically what we recommend for somebody who already has clients is, you know, we give you like 5 or 6 hours of example trainings that you can watch just within the program as things that I've done, for clients and things that our students have done for clients that they've been willing to share with us to share with other students. So once you do a few of those as a participant or viewer, you get the vibe of what people are teaching, right? You get the idea of what the common questions are. We have the templates, the slides, you can even download our slides and put them into AI and redo them for yourself. A lot of people, if they focus on a particular industry or geography, also like to add an industry specific demonstration, like, hey, if you're in real estate or if you're working mostly with nonprofits, whatever it is, people often will like to see something. Oh, well, how does this work specifically for my thing? Right. So once you have that sort of baseline understanding, it's, for somebody who's already comfortable working with clients, giving a presentation to an audience of 10 or 20 people, I think it's a very natural progression to be able to go back to the people who paid you recently, but also, if you've been doing this for a decade, you could go back to everyone who's ever paid you and say, "Hey, we worked with you on web dev, you know, 10 years ago. We're now doing these AI trainings. We know a lot of people are really excited about it or have questions. Is this something that would interest you?" Right? And it's just super relaxed. You're not making like a hard pitch to them in a way that is like a cold pitch. You're saying, "Hey, we've already worked together. Are you and your team interested in exploring something like this AI training that we are now doing?" And what we've found is that not only do you get responses from your existing clients, but it actually lights up your historical client list in a really nice way. And if you think about how hard it would be to go back to that client and be like, "Hey, do you want us to redesign your website again? I know we did it 3 years ago, but we'd love to make some more money. Can we redesign your website?" And they're like, "No, like it's good." Or and we hired somebody in house or whatever. Whereas this being totally new, it's a really nice way to just re-engage those old clients. They already trust you to some degree because you've done technical work for them to some degree in the past. And we find that it's a very natural fit and a natural extension of an existing design or development business.
Well, I love that. It's a touch point. I mean, I think it's a good practice to go back to clients anyway,
Yeah.
past or present, but there's a new touch point. You might have heard about it. We're doing some, work on it. And it seems like a live stream or a webinar might be an opportunity for an agency too, just like ChatGPT 101 or Gemini 101 or something like that. Um, but I don't want to get too down the weeds 'cause I know this is all changing and growing and everything. But what are some of the tools when we talk about ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude? There's a bunch out there. What are the ones you seem to, with your students and clients and otherwise, kind of gravitate toward?
Yeah, great question. So the number one thing that we teach is that everything that you do should be done with the assumption that the models and the software is going to change dramatically. So we actually teach what we call almost sort of a platform agnostic approach to everything, which means oftentimes people will say, "Well, which is the best one for me?" Right? And the answer is there may be a best one for you today, but what you really want to be learning is how to assess that on an ongoing basis because things are definitely going to change. It's not like maybe a new version of PHP is going to come out and in 2 years and we have to edit some stuff. It's like definitely a new version of everything will come out. And as we saw in the last few months, even Google and Gemini have now taken a big leap forward and are competitive, if not better, than a lot of the OpenAI and Anthropic models in some areas. So not only can you guarantee that a new version of the model you're currently using is going to come out, but you can also pretty much guarantee that there will be changes in the leaderboard. And, we have Google making moves. Eventually, Amazon is going to come out with something that I think is better than most other things on the market. WordPress folks will know all the open source names, right? But there's actually a big potential for a point where open source gets good enough and the devices get powerful enough that you might be able to run an open source model on your phone in 3 to 5 years, right? So if you think about all of these things happening simultaneously, you actually don't want to get too hooked in to one tool or model. In fact, in one of our newer programs, which is more about building AI tooling for yourself and for your career, regardless of whether you're a consultant, we're actually teaching people how to build their own history database. And that way I can work with Claude for this task. It'll synchronize over to my own database where I have my whole history and my context and everything. And then if I want to leave Claude and move over to Gemini or move over to the new thing next year, I have all that stuff and I own it, right? So I think that there's going to be a big push, and open source enthusiasts will know this already, right? And will identify with this. There's going to be a big push to avoid lock-in, to avoid all of my context being trapped with one platform, which is versus another. There's going to be incentives for platforms to lock you in, right? OpenAI is not going to want you to be able to easily switch in the same way that I've got a lot of archival stuff in Facebook and I can never delete my account no matter how much I might want to. Like everyone wants that, you know? So there's just a lot of movement. And so to bring it back to the question of what's the best, right? The answer is the best thing that you can do is to learn how to assess which model works best for you in the moment, but also always be aware and thinking about the fact that you want your stuff to be portable. So if you're building a workflow, you should think about portability. That being said, we still use the OpenAI ChatGPT family of models for almost every task. I think that Claude from Anthropic is far and away the best for writing. So, for example, if you wanted to take the transcript of this interview and then turn it into an article or case study or something, I would definitely use Claude for that because it just seems to have the most human feeling writing. It's a little bit less robotic in a good way. And then, as I mentioned, Gemini from Google has just improved by leaps and bounds recently. So we're seeing a lot of people, especially if you're hooking up to an API where you have like a workflow with Zapier or Make.com or one of these orchestration tools that allows you to kind of build visual workflows. You can just sort of say, same prompt. I'm going to try it in GPT-5. I'm going to try it in Gemini 3, see which one I like better. And then 3 months from now, I might do that test again and switch, right? So I think that portability is key. So if you're advanced enough to be feeling like everybody around you knows the things about AI that need to be kind of front and center, I think the next level is thinking about how you are going to sort of live by this portable platform agnostic approach over the next few years because it's going to really benefit you just so that you're not locked in to one or the other. And I think it alleviates some of the pressure of like always comparing the software to each other, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really enjoys that. It's laborious and tedious. But if you can say, you know what, GPT 5.2 is good enough for what I need right now, but I also know that I'm approaching this in a way that assumes I will change someday, I think that takes some of the pressure off choosing the right thing in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. One thing I take from what you just said is the history vault, like how you're,
Mhm.
how you're working with something so you know how you're working and you have that when you do or if you do choose another platform and all that. And it would seem like, your approach to it is the key, whatever the tool is. Well, Rob, I want to shift now to like what your students are hearing from clients on the other side. You've given some great buckets: training, strategy, and implementation. But what are they seeing as the benefits or use, or what are they looking for when they're thinking, "Hey, I want to try to utilize this in my business"? What are the common things you might hear from clients?
Great question. So a lot of clients are just befuddled by what to do next and are obviously they are aware that this is a big deal. They are aware that they need to take action upon it. One of the big problems that clients report to our students, especially if they have a company of more than 10 people, is everyone at the company is using AI in different ways that don't align with each other and often conflict with each other. And sometimes that's truly like a security concern, but most of the time it's just, I want my employees to be on the same page and be able to speak a common language and from a common set of goals and standards when they're thinking about, should we use AI for this? Should we hire help for this task that, might be an AI workflow build? Should we do this ourselves versus hiring a contractor versus trying to do it largely with AI? Stuff like that. So I think most people are aware that there's the potential for you to lop off a huge amount of tedious, busy work that your employees are currently doing with a good AI solution. They're also aware of these sort of headlines and, viral research papers that say things like 95% of companies who try an AI project get no return on investment from it. So there's some issues, obviously, with some of the methodology of those. They're a little bit narrower than what you would get from like the Gallup poll that we talked about earlier, which is a huge sample size. That being said, it is a problem that sometimes companies are diving in, they're doing a pilot, and then it's just being like lost or forgotten or never used, stuff like that. So the there's a few different problems that you could tease out of what I just said, but basically companies are coming in saying, we know we want to do something. We don't know exactly what that is. Employee A, B, and C are doing one thing, and employees D, E, and F are doing another thing. Employee G hates AI and thinks it's going to destroy the world. We have this like weird mix, and it's totally like uncontrolled. Like, in other words, imagine if everybody brought in like a different computer with a different operating system and was doing different stuff on it. Obviously, it would be hard for the company to collaborate and work together if that were the case. Instead, we have standards around most tooling, right? And even like Google Docs will work with Microsoft Word. The old school stuff basically is, manageable. But the new stuff, there's so many options and there's such a large range between employees or team members about how much they know, how they're using it, what they're comfortable with, what they're uncomfortable with. The first step for most companies is really getting everybody on the same page. And that's a place where bringing somebody in who is a trusted advisor or expert, like a training, provider, really helps because it allows everybody to sort of get behind the same set of core ideas and align with the management, align with the directors or whoever else is hiring the trainer. It takes a lot of weight off the management because they don't have to figure this out themselves, right? And it basically allows you to come in as a specialty trainer and planner for that specific problem, even before you actually build a workflow or anything like that.
It sounds like, and I bet you can resonate with this deeply. It's like, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people go, SEO, it's
Yeah.
the magic thing. And they'd come to agencies and be like, I need SEO, but they didn't know what to do past that. And that sounds like a similar opportunity here with AI. It's like, I've heard it's a magic, button. I need
Yep.
some clarity, some focus to make it useful. Because in my mind, Rob, I go back to like, I've been in marketing and communications my whole career. And so I use it all day, every day because it helps me with my own clarity, own focus, seeing blind spots, fleshing out things that would have taken me hours before.
Yeah.
But I know, like, for instance, if I'm in accounting for a business in the finance division or revenue or anything like that, I'm going to take reports and just say, what are you seeing, generally speaking? But I know there's so many particular things, but it sounds like, okay, initial interest in knowing there's something here that I can use and leverage. I need that first step, just helping me get clear on what, so we don't get more of these ROI projects coming back going, it just dumped but that's the opportunity I know you're doing and training your students for and working with your clients in to say, okay, a first step, and then we can venture into this jungle and see where it might hit.
Yeah. And I think one area that it goes beyond SEO is if 10 years ago I just did a bad job with SEO, like nothing really bad would happen to me. Like I wouldn't get the positive results, but it's not like there's a huge risk to messing it up. With AI, everyone is aware that there's a huge risk if you mess it up. There are risks to your data security. You've certainly seen stories about like the lawyer who cited non-existent cases because they were trusting AI in ways that were inappropriate, right? Essentially giving it too much authority. So people are very aware that there is a huge risk to messing it up. And they want to make sure that their employees have that training as well, which is something that I think is much a bigger deal in the AI space than in past tech. Like, I guess you could mess up your social media marketing or your SEO, and it could be bad, but like, there's not this like extremely salient risk factor in that sense. And then the other risk is if you don't do anything, you're going to get passed by your competitors, right? Especially
Status
if
quo.
even one of your competitors accomplishes a 50 or 75% efficiency increase, like you're in trouble, right? They can reduce their prices against you. They could, do more with fewer headcount, fewer people, right? There's all sorts of things that could happen to you that are actually really bad from a poorly planned AI approach. So I think that adds even more urgency and salience for companies as they're thinking about how to approach this challenge.
It's excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for all of this. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with innovating with AI. I know you got some cool stuff going on. Really, I'm going to be leaning in and listening to and interested in. What's exciting to you about what you're doing for your students in your community in the future?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of big things coming. So the consultancy program, we have a public directory where folks who reach certain milestones get published. We promote that to our newsletter of 200,000 plus readers. They're getting clients through that. So that's kind of the next level for folks who get to a certain level in our program. They've got that business. They can put themselves out there and they can really get new clients and leads through that, which is really cool. And we love to kind of be able to contribute to that ecosystem in general. We have two new programs that we are sort of working on for this year. One of them I briefly mentioned. It's about building what we call the executive system for your career, which goes beyond just sort of providing client services, and instead is more about a holistic way for you to build AI agents and assistants that are for you, whether you're in a career as a full-time employee, whether you are in another industry that's not tech related, or anything else. And then we have another program that's coming down the pipeline that is going to be about building software in an AI first way. So if you've vibe coded or if you've coded with an AI coding partner like Cursor, even if you're not a coder, but you see people doing that and you're like, I wish I could do that. Um, you've probably seen a lot about how amazing it is. I know for me, I'm a software developer and my time to launch has gone from like, I literally created a WordPress plugin in 47 minutes a couple of weeks ago that I think would have taken me 40 hours if I had done it in 2021, which is unbelievable, right? Obviously I'm a
Crazy.
coder, right?
Yep.
But like the the magnitude of opportunity in terms of creating software is dramatically changing. The business model and finances around software development is also changing because of that, right? Because if you think about how the cost of a line of code has essentially hit zero, right? You can code something. Like if you just say, I want this tool, make it in JavaScript, make it do this thing, you can often do that to a simple level of like launchable quality without any skills. Maybe you're paying $20 a month for the tool that you're using. So when you think about how that affects not only the web design and development economy, which obviously has changed a lot, but also like the ability of software as a service companies to run their operations, like it's changing everything. And I don't think we've even begun to see the shift. We're seeing a little bit of it here and there in this, stock market news and stuff like that. But we're really excited about that because that's going to be kind of a big revolution. Just, in WordPress, we talk about democratization of publishing of the web and democratization of the ability to build software is actually going to be a huge result of AI in the very near future. Some could say it already has happened, but it's happening more and more. So if you're a coder, if you've ever dabbled in web design, that's a very exciting one, because it's not just learning something new, but it's also how do I adapt to this new reality where the thing that used to be tedious, time consuming, and required a very high level of training and skill is now very different, almost to the point where anyone can do it. It's a little bit of an overstatement, but like we're pretty close to that precipice, if you will. So, very excited for that as a person who has loved to code since I was a teenager. Uh, things are changing, but we can do our best to help people adapt to it in a way that is positive for everybody.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was talking to Kevin and James from Ninja Forums at WordCamp US last year, and they were showing what they're doing and they're testing and experimenting. And I thought, oh, this is mind blowing. They set me up on my laptop and everything. And I got home and I was like, okay, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to wait, and it's going to be there for me to be able to do that. I'm not a developer like you all. But Rob, thank you so much. Is there any last insight, thought, something we didn't cover that you'd want to leave our community with?
Yeah, what we think about, there's a lot of negativity about AI, right? We know that it's going to get more politically charged over time. There are job loss concerns. There's things like electricity and pollution from data centers, water issues. So when you think about how you can approach the AI transition in a way that is positive for you or your business, one of the things that we really want to convey to everybody who's an Innovating with AI reader or audience member is we want this to not just be positive for us, but positive for the people around us, our communities, family, friends, society at large. So if you're listening to this, you're probably pretty plugged in. You're probably relatively techie or interested in tech. Recognize that your 10 next closest family members probably aren't that, right? Or your 10 closest neighbors or friends. And the folks who are plugged in today are at a very unique place in history because we actually have the pre-existing skills and interests to plug in to the new AI tools, to experiment with them and essentially use them to our advantage right now. But most people don't. Like if you have a friend or a family member who is a nurse or a teacher, they may tangentially be able to use AI, but they're not really like in a position to have huge changes or positive wins or positive experiences from it beyond maybe just like using it for fun as a toy or to research a product or something. So we want to make sure that everybody realizes that you're actually in like an extremely fortunate spot right now in that you have the interest, willingness, and ability to be a early adopter of this new technology. I think at this point, it is very clear that this is going to change everything about computing in our lifetimes. When my son graduates from college, he's going to graduate into a completely different world. This is like, maybe 8 years from now or 10 years from now or something. Uh, Completely different world in terms of what computers can do, right? And we are at a very early moment in that. So what we try to do is say, I want to obviously improve things for myself, but I also want to think about how can I spend that extra time that I get back, that extra money that I earn in a way that helps the people around me who are just not yet able to benefit from AI in the ways that we are. So beyond things like direct job loss, beyond things like environmental concerns, the biggest question is how do we make sure that this dramatic change in computing abilities is actually good for the world around us? Because, like, I don't want to live in a dystopian future where only the AI CEOs win, right? I want to live in a future where there's open source options, there's accessible options, and we can build something that actually improves life for everybody. A lot of technology does that, but not all technology does that. So the more involved you can get, the more you can see where things are going, be able to push things in the right direction. And the way we kind of think about it is I want to be here as the future is crafted, and I want to have a voice in that. And I think that's kind of the big takeaway of the folks in our community who they are very aware of the negatives and the concerns, And they also are saying, I want to have a voice in how this gets shaped over the next 5 or 10 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Rob Howard, innovatingwithai.com. Go over there, sign up for the newsletter he talked about, check out what he's doing. And thank you so much, Rob, for being here today and sharing all of this for us to think better, think about what we're doing, see what the opportunities are that we can, grow our business and be a citizen of this that helps its future. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was awesome.